Hi and welcome back to Cheeky Crypto. My name is Nick and today guys we're going to be jumping down into the crypto market to take a look at 3 altcoins and what I would expect to happen next with these. As I get into this video, if you find it useful and informative, hit the like button. I really do appreciate that. If you happen to be new to the channel, then why not go ahead and subscribe, tap the bell, select all notifications, and in doing so you will be kept up to date with absolutely everything that we do here at Cheeky Crypto. Now if you have not yet joined us in Discord, the link is in the description down below. It's a fantastic community talking crypto 24/7. It's completely free and I don't think you'll be disappointed by what you find down there. You'll also find links to the new Cheeky podcast, a fantastic community-led podcast, basically keeping everyone up to date with what's going on in the crypto space on their daily commutes into the office. It is available on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, and here on YouTube. So why not check that out in the description down below. Okay guys, let's kind of get right on into it and get started with this video. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is actually just kind of bring up our kind of Bitcoin's direction. Okay, I think it's important that we kind of reflect on what the state of the current market is looking like, and before we kind of jump down into some more of the details, specifically around these 3 altcoins. Okay, so for Bitcoin here, we obviously do have our local top at about 24,276. This is pretty much in line to a big ABC structural move upwards here. Okay, now obviously we're tracking this kind of small ABC move to the downside. It is still possible that we can move up a little bit here, but essentially I have this kind of mapped out at the moment at $20,786. Okay, this is in line with what we were talking about this morning on the live stream, and what we're witnessing right now is basically lack of momentum. Okay, our stochastic RSI down here is progressing really fast from oversold. It will be soon overbought, and potentially even by the time this video goes live it is already overbought, indicating that we are likely to see some downward price action. Now as I come up into the 4-hour, you can see this is oversold, the 8-hour oversold, and the daily needs to correct down as well. So we can either stay in the oversold area on the 4-hour, 8-hour for a bit longer whilst we have a much deeper correction before we have a significant bounce, or we can bounce up after this correction right here is kind of finished. One of the things I do expect this week is pretty much a lot of bleeding in the crypto space. There's a lot of fundamental things that are going on in the world, so the FOMC meetings and a whole host of a few others. So I'm not expecting any kind of major moves upwards, unfortunately. I do think the failure to close above the 200 moving average on the weekly and basically has now brought us in to a more bearish scenario. The only way to have stayed in a bullish kind of sentiment would have been to close above that on the weekly, which hasn't happened. So do expect some volatile movements in the market as we kind of go through the week. Okay, so knowing that, we should obviously go into these altcoins knowing that there's a bit of a volatile moment for Bitcoin. Bitcoin's going to kind of lead the way down. Now, obviously, if I bring this up into a bigger screen and I bring this one, we did obviously talk about what was going on with the whales and stuff like that for Bitcoin. So they're basically de-risking, they're coming out of their positions, selling to retail investors and all of that. So just be aware that those things are happening in the background, and if you're not familiar, do check out the live stream that I did earlier. It will basically hopefully give you a few more of those insights. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into the first altcoin. This is one that was heavily suggested during yesterday's live stream for altcoins, and this basically is something that we don't really get a chance to really talk about too often. It's not one that we're personally invested in, so we cover it on requests, more specifically for our Patreon members down in Discord, but I will cover it here on this particular video. Okay, so right away we can see that my low zones within our 5th wave structured move comes in at 15 cent to 20 cent. We actually did just about break into this area just over here, so it's possible that this is actually our 5th wave low point. However, it is too soon to be confident to say that that's definitely the case, because this is all corrective up here, right? So we look at this entire move up as a correction, and we have failed to go up higher than our origin. This is potentially problematic for FTM, because it could mean that we actually have an overextension in our 5th wave, meaning that actually we've got a long way to go down just yet, and we have barely even scraped the surface of the damage that could be done with this. Okay, so we don't want that. We hope that our fifth wave structure is complete here, and what we'll do is we'll go ahead and just bring this up into a slightly larger time frame, such as our daily, and we can really get a good idea of the scale of that. So we do want this to be the low, and if that is the case, then there's no requirement here to come down lower, at least within the structure that we currently have. Okay, but one of the things that we do have to acknowledge, and we have to come to terms with, whether you're bull or bear, is that this is a corrective structure upwards, and coming down is highly likely. Don't have to come down into new lower lows, but it is also possible. As we completed this structure here, it's possible that actually all of that is just a potential wave 3. Okay, so let me just draw out what that looks like. We have a wave, no, that's the wrong button. Grab this one, it's a wave 1 over here, this is a wave 2, all of this is a wave 3, this is a wave 4, and then we pull back down a little bit deeper. Okay, so that's a possible scenario on a much bigger macro move. So, you know, if that is the case and we're starting to see that reversal for FTM, then my accumulation zone would be mapped out right here, basically between grab hold of this, let me just pull this in right here and here. Okay, and basically 13.2 to 16.75. okay, so if we do start to pull back down and we do see it as a macro 5 wave, this is just a 4th wave corrective move, this would be very much aligned to what Ethereum is doing, and then we just track Ethereum back down into these low ranges. Okay, from here of course there'll be upward directional move, and we would look for pretty good appreciation at that point. Now, to take us up to the previous all-time high, from assuming the worst case scenario on the low side, we would of course be looking at about 25x. Okay, so a pretty significant push just to get us to the all-time high. However, there are some fundamental things that you probably want to be aware of when it comes to FTM before FOMOing into all of it. So yes, I think the ecosystem is fantastic, but obviously I think it was a dev or one of the founders or whatever, actually, you know, has kind of quit. So I think essentially what you want to do is you want to make sure you're comfortable with the fundamentals behind all of that. Don't take my word for it. I'm not that well into the fundamental analysis on FTM, so correct me in the comments below if I have misunderstood what was going on there. That isn't really my bag. Chris understands that stuff way more than I do, but taking a look at this from a technical standpoint, I do think there's a huge amount of gains to be made with FTM under these circumstances, if of course we can at least go to the previous all-time high, let alone new all-time highs. Okay, so when we actually review everything from all of this over here, we can see pretty good progression to the upside in a 5-wave structured move. Moving back down into a 5-wave structure could be alarming in itself, so again we want to keep an eye on that. It's possible that, you know, having 5 waves on the daily like this could be a part of a much bigger play of some other kind of macro movements also going on, so caution should definitely be applied. We know what would invalidate these things, and if we fail to go up to the all-time high in the next run, then I would expect significant room to the downside, lower than the previous low, if that makes sense. So a lot of things to kind of think about for FTM, but essentially, yeah, right now all eyes should be on the correction, potentially taking us down ever so slightly lower. Okay, so really that's the first altcoin I really wanted to talk about. There isn't really too much really I can say about this other than the fact that we need to wait on the structure that moves to the downside next. Okay, it's a tad too soon to be more predictive over the area, other than thinking that we're going to down to 13.2 up to a maximum height of about 16.75. So that yellow zone range that we were talking about, that's essentially really where I do estimate the low to be. But there's a caveat to this. That's just the macro projection, and the micro movements will also dictate whether we go short or long on that position. So it's important that we actually count the wave structures on the way down, so that we can be confident behind those movements. Okay, so let's go ahead and now bring up the next altcoin. This is a channel favorite, and you know, I think this is actually a favorite of many retail investors as well. So let's go ahead and bring this up, right? So we are talking about XRP, and XRP is one of those ones you either love it or you hate it. It has a lot of, you know, I guess it splits opinion based on its use case, the supply, and all those kind of things. But one of the things that I think that no matter what projects you are really bullish on or really bearish on, what is going on with Ripple and the SEC is critically important to all of crypto. It doesn't matter if you like XRP or not. Essentially, that lawsuit and the conclusion of that lawsuit is going to either help or hinder the SEC in future prosecutions against crypto firms. So it's very, very important that from a crypto perspective, that the SEC do not get a win. Okay, if the SEC get a win, then this particular case with Ripple would potentially be used as leverage to sue a whole host of additional crypto companies, including some of your personal favorites. Okay, so whether you like XRP or not, that lawsuit is of the utmost importance to all of crypto, in my opinion. Okay, let's talk about the movements though. We are expecting a fifth wave down lower. This is actually a part of a 335 structure within an E wave move on our daily. Now, that sounds more complicated than it actually is, and I'll go through the larger time frame in a second. Essentially here, we are looking for this corrective move probably to take us ever so slightly higher if the market allows. It does look though that we are falling a little bit short of that, meaning that our original premise of a move to the downside is possible. Okay, so we should be concerned to a degree. We do have a zigzag pattern on this B wave move. It is possible that we just fall short of this 1-to-1 ratio. However, my expectations were always that we should have a double top as a minimum, which would be 38.71. At the moment, this seems to be quite a far-fetched target. However, I am optimistic still, because we haven't moved down to any invalidation points, that it is still possible. Okay. So I still think that we are inside the fourth wave. I don't think we've started the next move down just yet on XRP, but I could be wrong. Ethereum, unfortunately, will lead the way, and if Ethereum has started its move down, then potentially that is really what we're going to be watching here for XRP. Now, I do think that Ethereum has a good shot at moving up into its final move higher, and I obviously spoke about that this morning as well. So if that is the case, I expect XRP to follow suit, and then from there, we pull back down. Now, the lows for XRP, according to my macro projections, we have here at 23.8 and 26.7. Okay, that would be where I would estimate our fifth wave to go based on how high our fourth wave is going to go. Okay, that is subject to change depending on what the actual outcome of all of this move is. So, you know, the higher than 38.71 we go, the lower that our wave 5 would go. Okay, so at the moment, that is where that sits, and that's kind of what I'm most optimistic about. Now, if I jump up into our daily, bring this down, this is what I'm talking about. We have a large A down currently into the B move. This is our correction from our local high of April 2021. So when we pull back down, we're actually inside this unpredictable E wave, which is currently tracking as a 335 in my opinion, and that's kind of what we're tracking. And I think essentially what we're looking for and hoping for here is to find really good reversals. Now, E waves can be the thing that really trick a lot of people into thinking that something else is going to happen, and then all of a sudden you get this really explosive move upwards. Now, this is compounded by that lawsuit with Ripple and the SEC, that if this conclusion comes sooner than expected, essentially you're going to see a huge break to the upside. And one of the things that's really important with the SEC versus Ripple is a conclusion and clarification on whether or not XRP is a security or not. Okay, so by the end of this lawsuit, that should be a given, right? I would think very hard done by if the SEC are able to go after Ripple for all of the previous sales without also confirming whether future sales will be considered a security or not. Okay, so one of the things that we have to understand here is that the US are potentially hurting themselves long term if they were to call it a security. But even on that premise, one of the things for retail investors that will become very apparent is once you know whether it's a security or not, which personally, I don't think so. And here in the UK, it's just known as an exchange token. Other countries around the world consider it a currency and all that kind of stuff. So one of the things that we have to acknowledge here is once you have the clarity on what it is, you're actually able to utilize it within the boundaries of the law. This means that you can start seeing it get listed on exchanges and things like that, and therefore it becomes a little bit more widely adopted. Now, with that, you'll also see crazy amounts of FOMO. People will be speculating that it's going to the moon once you have the, confirmation of one or the other, right? I don't think it really matters which, just as long as there is clarity there. Once clarity exists, I think the price is going to move pretty significantly. But that's just my thoughts and opinions. On this, though, our 1-to-1 ratio actually shows it at $8.64. And I think with conclusion from the lawsuit, we could probably push this up towards our kind of, this kind of range here, anywhere really between 9.36 and 14.43. I think there's going to be a sweet spot there. The higher the price goes, the increased selling pressure that there would be from long-term holders who have been dollar cost averaging, let's say at late 2018 or early 2019, and maybe even like Chris and myself back in, when the lawsuit was dropped in 2020, when it was 17 cents, huge accumulation points were there. Right now, we're looking at this at 34 cents. I still think there's a possible move lower, as I said, right, 23 cents. So huge accumulation zones possible before we move on up. So as soon as we come up into the next new all-time high, the selling pressure is going to be absolutely insane. So we'll keep that in the back of our head. Obviously, 𝗕𝗘𝗪𝗪𝗧, he's kind of, stopped selling now. He's got some XRP that he's keeping for family securities. But essentially, one of the main drains of XRP's liquidity, that's kind of now been plugged, which is fantastic. It's taken years, but it means that we're not seeing that constant drain on retail investors, which means we can finally start to see XRP move in more clear directions. Okay, so for XRP, that's kind of where I place that. I think there's some volatility to be expected, and some fantastic outcomes in the long term. Okay, so we'll keep that in the back of our heads. I think it's going to do incredibly well. We just have to kind of be patient with it and kind of watch what happens as time progresses. Okay, let's get into the next altcoin. This is one that has done incredibly well recently, and something that many retail investors are super interested in. So let's take a look, right? We're talking about Quant. So Quant versus, I'll say versus, but paired up with USDT on the hourly chart Binance is, I say, data source. Now, for this, obviously, we're taking a look at a very impulsive move upwards, and this comes from an impulsive move to the downside. Okay, so we have confirmation of a 535 structure or an ABC structure, coming down here at $40.01. Okay, now this is important because this, unlike many of these other cryptocurrencies, is a confirmation of a potential bottom. This is the right structure that you would expect to see after completing a bottom. Okay, so when I say, Bitcoin doesn't look like it's hit its bottom yet, or Ethereum needs to go down into lower lows, that's because we haven't seen this. Whereas on Quant, this is exactly what you see. You see this 180% push up here in a clear impulsive structured move, and we aren't done yet either. Okay, so we complete our zigzag, our ABC, we move on up, and we have a 5-wave structure. The minimum expectation of this would be a zigzag, so we'd move up significantly higher than our 5th wave target here. But if we actually move down in a nice WXY corrective structure, 50 to 88% of this entire move up here, then essentially that puts us potentially, and I say potentially, in the world of an impulsive structure on a macro time frame, such as the daily, okay, or 8 hour from this hourly chart. That puts us in a really strong position. Okay, so let's first of all talk about what's going on up this end. I expect that our 5th wave should actually continue a motion down. Okay, my typical area for this would be $83. There's no guarantee that we come down that low, but that would be my expectation on a standard and typical waveform movement, and then we should move on up. Now, if we do hit $83 and start to progress upwards, my targets are $124 and $140. That is where I would expect this 5th wave to finish. Once that is done, I would expect this 50 to 88% crash for Quant. That might sound really scary, but it's actually exactly what you want to see. This gives us a maximum upward swing and maximum potential later. Okay, so one of the things that we should be very, very cautious on here is that there is going to be a small window to get out of Quant and then accumulate later. Okay, obviously this is my opinion, but it is based on the rules that are around Elliott wave theory and the Fibonacci numbers. Understand that by the time you get up to this area here, the market is going to feel incredibly greedy, and usually that is when you start to think that the market is going to pull back down. Also, the 5th wave is usually generated from retail investors, whereas wave 3 tends to be more whales and institutions. They actually exit by the top of wave 3, and wave 5 is only left to retail investors, which is why it's usually the smaller wave. Okay, unless of course you get some crazy FOMO that makes it an overextension. Now, essentially, Once this is done, that 50 to 88% retracement makes a nice potential move to the upside. And what that would look like, let me bring this down in scale and just bring it in. Okay, I'm going to pull this to a 4 hour just so that we can scale it up. Okay, so with a wave one here, that would consist of 5 waves. A wave 2 typically would be 50 to 88% retracement. And then a wave 3 would go up quite significantly, some kind of wave 4 down, and then a final 5th wave higher. As I said in many of my streams recently, a wave 1 is considered to be a bit of a fake pump. No one really buys into it in any strong way. Wave 2 is then a I told you so kind of wave, but also it sets this higher low area that kind of triggers a bit of an impulsive move. Then institutional players, when they see this kind of indication of a good move upwards to be had, they jump in and they push the price up high. Retail investors are usually left out of wave 3. Wave 4 comes back down after investors such as whales and institutions sell down, and basically the price pulls back. Retail sees this as a last opportunity to get in before it goes to the moon. They take it up into the final 5 wave and then don't understand why the price drops down afterwards. Okay, once you've completed 5 waves, you see a different trend form. It reverses in its order. Okay, so knowing the psychology behind these movements means that when we start to see the pullback down from our top of this area over here, this real small time frame, then essentially what we want to see is a 50 to 88%. Okay, if we don't see 50 to 88%, then we have a harder chance of moving up into an impulsive structure. Okay, it can still happen, but it's less likely. So what we want to do is we want to see a nice deep correction, and that is healthy. But we cannot cross down lower than 40.1 because that would invalidate our potential bullish movement upwards. Okay, so what we've got here is a really good reversal point, taking us from September of 2021, where we started to see this zigzag pattern down, and this is now the beginning move. This is exactly what we look for confirmation of a bottom, and then obviously coming back down here, looking and tracking to see what kind of wave structures appear here. But essentially this is going to be the area that we want to accumulate and then take up with the whales and the institutions into wave 3. Okay, so smart money would be following what the kind of what the whales are doing. So do track that, keep an eye on it. But for quant, I think there's a lot of upside here. It's good to see that just like Sandbox and just like 𝗕𝗘𝗪, the structures are here to say the bottom is in. And what we want to do now is hold this area, and we cannot cross down lower. So when we push up higher here and we see Ethereum drop down into new lower lows, that's the heavy correction on quant. Okay, those things are tracking the same time. Only difference here is that we actually have confirmation of a move upwards on something like quant, whereas we don't for Ethereum. So do expect an 80% move to the downside, right? Potentially here, taking us back down into these low ranges. I estimate $46.5, so 46.5, to about 64.8 for the lows of wave 2. And I know it sounds crazy. Okay, I said the same thing for 𝗕𝗘𝗪 way back, right? When we were at 28 cent, I was predicting 4.5 cent, or even potentially lower. And you know, everyone was calling me crazy at the time, yet it actually plays out. How you get there could be many different reasons, right? I estimate that Ethereum is going to be the main driver for this downside price action, along with the wider economy, whether that's interest rate hikes or whatever. Essentially, this is a very fragile time in the market around these Fibonacci numbers, and it won't take much negative news to bring that price to the downside. It's all about the psychology of the people who are involved in these projects, longing it, shorting it, holding it, whatever. This is really a fragile moment as we approach these higher zones. Okay, so we'll keep that in the back of our heads. Essentially, guys, I'm going to leave the video right there. I've covered the 3 altcoins that I saw most prominently kind of mentioned in the last live stream. But let me know what coins you want me to cover in the next live stream in the comments below. Let me know which ones you're most bullish on or most bearish on, which ones you want me to review in the next live stream, which will be tomorrow for altcoins. With all that said, if you found this useful and informative, hit the like button. I really do appreciate that. If you happen to be new to the channel, then why not go ahead and subscribe, tap the bell, select all notifications, and in doing so, you will be kept up to date with everything that we do here at Cheeky Crypto. With all that said, done and out of the way, I hope everyone has a fantastic day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.